Hello, everyone. My name is Hank Setala,
And I'm Casey Macbride.
and we're here with another fun episode of Stir Crazy Shamans. Hello, everyone. Today we thought I kind of came up with the topic point of view creates reality because I have come to the awareness that just the way that we look at the world, the lenses that we have on, and the way that it can color our experience has a huge impact on what we create and actualize in our life. And it's just something that's so easy to change too that I thought it would be a great little topic to talk about and give some examples and some tools to help starting to shift that.
I was just watching this a yogi or master, whatever you want to call him, but he was giving a cool exercise on how to sort of shift your point of view and your perception for just a moment. So I'm feeling called to just share that really quickly.
Sure, go for it.
I'm probably not going to be that great at explaining it, but he was saying is sit here for a second and wrap your arms around yourself like you're giving yourself a hug. Just, it might be weird if you're out in public, but who cares? Wherever you are, just wrap your arms around yourself.
All right, I'll do it.
Feel that. And first, become really aware of the sensation of your arms wrapping around you and hugging you. Feel the pressure as you squeeze in and hug yourself. Feel your hands against your shoulders and feel yourself as the one being hugged right now. Feel as though you're receiving this warm hug. And now shift your attention and feel your arms from the point of view of the one giving the hug. Feel the sensation of the shoulders against the surface of your hands and feel as though you are the one giving the hug in this moment and experience that. And just there, we've had a really quick experience from doing the exact same thing, but shifting our perception to have two different experiences from two different points of view.
That's a great example. That's awesome.
So I thought that was a cool way to open up this conversation.
Yeah, and you thought that you weren't sure about it. Well, because this topic comes a little bit from the world of access consciousness, and Casey has just started dipping his toes into it and has loved it thus far.
Yes, I have. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. But with some of the things where I realized that point of view creates reality, and you might not even realize that it's your point of view. There's some things that are so ingrained in us from childhood that we don't even recognize that it's our point of view. And I'll just use money and abundance as an example. You might consciously be looking to create money in your life, and that's really you're doing everything you can to create abundance. But you have the subconscious point of view from when you were a kid that you were taught money is the root of all evil. You can either be happy or you can be rich. You can't be both. And so, on some level, if your real point of view, if you're the seed belief, if you want to call it that, is that if I had money, I would be unhappy and I would prefer to be happy, then your other than conscious will outcreate your conscious. So your true point of view. So that's when it comes down to getting really honest, brutally honest with yourself and saying, what do I really know about where I'm coming from on this topic? What do I think? What do I really know about it? And get to the energy that might be creating these glass ceilings of limitation or roadblocks in what you're looking to create.
And when we're tapping into our abilities to communicate with spirit and our spirit guides, this is something over the past couple of days with our psychic abilities talk and other videos I'm making that I just feel really called to sort of keep touching on. But we have, at some point during our childhood, it was acceptable for us to run around in the yard and imagine things and go on adventures with our imagination and do all this fun, amazing stuff, have imaginary friends. And then at a certain point, our parents or someone told us, okay, it's time to stop. You need to focus on math now. And that's more important than having these adventures. Sit down, focus on your studies. A real adult doesn't spend time letting their imagination run away with them. Somehow, in some way, that gets ingrained in us. And our point of view then, for those of us who are struggling to start out and, say, learning to communicate with our spirit guides, for example, we have so much trouble because we distrust our own imagination. Because at some point, someone told us that the imagination is worthless, useless. It's not real. There's no value to it. And so we have this distrust with our own senses. So when we start to have real experiences of spirit, the first thing that comes in is, oh, am I just making this up? And so that point of view of having, am I just making this up? And the fact that there is something that's making things up and that there's no value to that really holds so many people back from experiencing an entire realm of beauty, all the realms of spirit.
Yeah. And so if you're watching now, either live or on the replay, just take a moment and allow whatever the energies are, these etheric boulders, every place where you have this energy that doesn't allow you to step into the space of just having a no point of view that has no charge on being told you can or can't do anything, and just all those blocks energetically to come up. And you don't have to be aware of the experience that created them. Just have the awareness of the energy and just invite our beloved Pachamama, Mother Earth, to take it. And there's some words in Quechua that I'll use for it. Iari Pachamama, Huchimikwi Pachamama, Ompui, 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 Amaximui, Amaxipui, Ompui, Ompui, Ompui. So there we go. So it's all about just being aware of the energy, and whatever tool or technique you want to use to transmute it, to send it on its way, works for you.
And I love the asking of questions in order to begin to shift our point of view. Because when you ask a question, the subconscious mind has to go looking for an answer somehow. So instead of asking a specific question, like, what's my favorite color? We might get like, okay, it's green. Right? We already know the answer to that one, or we have an idea, or like there's a finite set of like it could be this many colors. But instead, if you ask an open-ended question about something like, what magic could I create in my life today?
I love that question.
Right? Really open-ended question. But because it's a question that we present to the subconscious mind, it can't just ignore it. It'll go looking for an answer, but it's so open-minded, now it starts to look for possibilities. And although we may not be aware of what's going on in the subconscious mind, shifts in our programming are starting to take place just by asking a question like that. So it's really fascinating.
Absolutely. I love that stuff. And just to give an example, like how point of view can also create reality when you're not intending it. As a parent, you have to, they say jokingly, of course, that you teach them the first years of their life how to walk and to talk, and the rest of their life to sit down and shut up, right? So you're always telling them, don't do that, don't do that. And I'm guilty of this, where you say, stop doing that, or this is going to happen. And really, there's no justification that it will happen, but you gave them that information. And a child that has no point of view says, okay, well, if I continue to do this, that's what's going to happen. So my example is, we have a Honda Odyssey, doors on each side that open automatically, and the kids love just opening the door and closing the door and opening the door and closing the door. I'm like, stop doing that, you're going to break the door if you keep playing with it. And guess what happened? The door broke. And I had the awareness the second that it happened, that had I not told them, hey, if you keep playing with the door is going to break, that it wouldn't have broke.
Well, speaking of cars, how often does it happen to you or any of us where we're driving down the street and the light's green and we're coming up on it and you go, oh, it's going to be red, it's too far away. Right when I get there, it's going to turn red, and then it turns red. Right? So your point of view, that idea you had about it, created that reality in that moment right there. But you can start to play with that the other way, right? And so when you catch yourself in a situation where you would normally make a judgment like that, try either one, just being really aware and not, or do the opposite and start to put out there, like, oh, I'm making it through that light. No matter, like, I see it, I'm there, I made it through already. And then just pay attention to how more often you will make it through that light, as opposed to when you think, oh, I'm not going to make that. Because almost 100% of the time, then you're not going to make it through.
And if anybody has questions, if you have experiences that you'd like to share around the topic, feel free to put them into comments. And if you are making comments and we haven't acknowledged them yet, occasionally they don't roll through to Facebook for some reason. So in the description for the topic today, there is a link to our YouTube channel. You can pick up the video there. I know comments from YouTube always come in. So if you do want to interact and we're not responding, please head over to YouTube and check it out. And while you're there, please subscribe.
Yeah, check out Shaman's Way YouTube as well, and Holistic Health and Healing. We can post all the links to those later in a little bit, but
yep. Yeah, we were streaming to all of them at once, and then we found out that YouTube frowns upon duplicate content. So now we're just streaming to here, at least for this particular segment. And then other things like Casey's Shamanic Meditations go to his channel, Holistic Highlights go to HHH. So there's still good content in all three. We just couldn't continuously post to all three at once because we would have eventually gotten smacked on the hand by YouTube.
Right. Uh, um, Points of view create reality. Okay, so where are we going with this, Hank?
I don't. Well, we can go anywhere we want. Hey, we got Adriana clapping. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, and if you ever want to come on, Dr. K, you're welcome to offer your contribution. She's one of the. She's actually the doctor who is an affiliate at HHH. She has her own storefront in the same building as us, but she's one of the affiliates on the website. So if you ever want to come on, let me know. I'll send you a link to join the conversation. And then her and I are going to be doing a thing on Friday under Holistic Highlights where she's going to hook me up remotely to her machine that's going to like read all the stuff and like basically will give all my innards on public video and like show
Nice.
how the machine can say, hey, this is what's going on with you, and these are all the things that you could do to help balance the body and have a better experience with your body. So looking forward to that. A little nervous, like I'm like I hope I'm healthy.
Is that the biofeedback thing? Is it that?
I know she has biofeedback, but it's
different.
she has a couple things, and I'm not sure which thing we're doing Friday. But I filled out my little questionnaire, and we'll see how I do.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, she's about to start with the client today, but next time. Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll definitely would love to have you on. We could even plan for a whole segment: stir crazy shamans plus like actual traditional functional medicine. What a combination!
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks for stopping in for a little bit while you can.
And so I wanted to share a little story that from the other day. I kind of touched on it a little bit, but when I fell while I was walking through the forest, I was climbing over a log and fell, and I twisted my ankle, and it hurts so bad that I was like really limping for a few steps. And I know I had the thought immediately of anytime something like this has happened in the past, it might not hurt that much that day, but the next day, then it's always really, really painful, and I can barely walk. I've had been on lots of adventures and had injuries before, but instead I said, you know what? No, if I really believe that, I'm going to create that reality, and it's going to happen. So instead, I stopped, and I knew there was energy stored from the impact from that trauma. There was energy trapped in the ankle from that. So I went and did a process of bringing in energy from Father Sky, and just really, with all of my focus and intent, was clearing out all of that energy so that all that was left was healthy energy that the body was going to use to not just heal itself, but to stay healthy and become even stronger. And so I went from limping around to doing this short process of going through and healing, which again, a lot of it is the actual mechanics of how we're moving energy, but a big part of it is having the very firm knowing belief that it already is so, that thing is healed. And so went from limping to being able to go on this whole hike, climbing up hills and everything with no discomfort whatsoever. And then the next day, again, when in the past, I know, because again, healers are like, how do you put it about going to the mechanic? Like the mechanic never takes care of his car properly.
Yeah, landscapers never mow their own grass well or on time. Mechanics' cars are always falling apart, and healers sometimes forget.
Yeah, so oftentimes in the past, I would forget to do the healing right away when I would get an injury like this, but I remembered. So the next day I woke up, rolled that ankle around, stood up, and I was about 95% fine. And then throughout that day, did a little more work, and then completely pain-free. But I mean, when I say this was like a really bad ankle sprain, I mean, I really fell, and my ankle probably twisted and like almost touched my leg. Not quite there, but it was a really bad sprain. I was really limping at first. So yeah, it just goes to show you what your belief around. And I think oftentimes, like the reaction we have to an injury, our bodies and our energy fields remember that, and then that gets amplified. And then Dr. K was saying that she hopes my ankle is better. I was talking to her that day, and she used to be foot and ankle surgeon, she told me. So, so yeah. But like, I know, like one thing when we're kids, I always used to remember this. When I was a little kid, I would fall or something and scrape my knee or whatever. And whoever, my dad or my mom, would be like, oh my gosh, are you okay? They would get all worried. And then I would get upset and I would cry, not because I was in that much pain, but because of their emotional reaction of worry. And I remember at one point calling them out on it. When I was a really little kid, I had the awareness of this, where I like fell over and they were, are you okay? And then like I started to get upset. And I'm like, no, it doesn't hurt. It's because you're getting upset. That's why I'm upset. And but yeah, like, so the reaction of ourselves and those around us, our energy fields, listen to that, hear that, and that emotional or whatever kind of reaction we have gets trapped in the energy field that translates into more physical problems.
Yeah, when my kids would fall, I don't know who I picked this up from. I would be like, "Oh no, did you hurt the ground?" Like, I'm assuming they're not hurt at all. And I would even laugh a little bit with them. Or something traumatic happened. It's just like, man, you got to laugh at this. This is too funny. Yeah, yeah. And one time Max had just gotten this hot chocolate, and we got to the table, and it just slips from his hands, and it hits the thing, and the kinetic energy, of course, propels all the hot chocolate straight up in the air, and it drops all over his brand new white racing shirt. And he has this horrified look on his face. At first I was like, oh, did that hurt? And he's like, no. And then I just started laughing. I'm like, good, because this is hilarious, and I would have felt terrible if you were hurt. And I laughed. So I wanted to make sure he was okay first. And then I laughed about it, and he was laughing too at the end. I'm like, that was funny. You gotta laugh when things like that happen and not take life too seriously.
I think it was you that just said the other day, laughter is far more healing than crying will ever be, and like emotional release and stuff.
Well, yeah, quoting Gary Douglas, he shared like in the Access Bars video, when you become certified, he says that laughter releases more energy than tears ever will, and so laugh yourself to healing, and the greatest gift you can give to the world is your laughter. So laugh.
I remember, well, in the past, in healing sessions, this has happened too. But during my first healing session with you, as energy was being released, I was laughing a lot, like without being prompted to. Just like as energy would come up, I would just like burst out into laughter, and that had happened during healing sessions before. So I wonder if that's not like just instinctively how my body knows to start to move energy.
It may be, and I'll tell you, one of my favorite classes. Have you ever heard of? They call him. He's a Lomi Lomi teacher. His name's Harry Jim. His first name's Jim. And he was teaching at Lilydale, and there was probably 100 people all in the fire hall just around the thing, and there's tables set up, and it's like an introductory class on Hawaiian hand healing. And he comes in, and the guy's kind of heavier set, and he looks at the group, and he just starts doing this belly laugh, and he's laughing so hard, and like tears are coming down his eyes. The whole room is laughing now, and like this goes on for maybe 10 minutes, and then he just stops. He smiles. He's like, "Okay, now we can start." But he came in, and just his presence of laughter like spread like to everybody. Nobody knew why we were laughing, other than it was awesome, and it was such a healing experience. Just that experience of laughter. So. Find something to laugh about, and if you don't feel like you can't laugh, then just go ahead and fake it, and see at some point there's a turning point, and you actually start laughing.
I love this. So speaking of laughter, one of my guides, it seems like he's an angel who I call Graham, and it seems like his whole purpose in life is just to make sure, one, that I don't take spirituality or anything too seriously, and also just to make me laugh as many times a day as possible. Anytime I connect with him and go to talk to him, it's like I'll try to ask him something serious, and he's just cracking jokes, and he knows my humor better than anyone, so he just cracks like the goofiest jokes and just cracks me up every single time. But it is, sometimes I'll sit there and I'm focusing on like trying to work through something or whatever, and I get get this serious look on my face, and I'm kind of tense and like focusing, and then he'll just come in and crack some joke about like how weird I look sitting there, and then I'll just bust out laughing, and like that was what I needed to get me out of that space where I was too tense.
Yeah, in shamanism we call that puklei. It means sacred play. And so we're having Wilka Puklei on the Kausai Pacha, which means sacred play in the game of life, or in the field of living energy. And it's all about don't take yourself too seriously, and that's where the shaman will mess with the students, let you sit in the cave for a week until you get fed up, and then come out and they're like, "Oh, what took you so long? We're having a party." And you're like, "What?" And the party is actually for you because you finally came out of the cave. and stood up to your teacher. They're like, "Hey, yeah, look at that." Or one of my favorites, Zane was telling a story about somebody who showed up to learn from a shaman, and they were dressed in all the shaman stuff and the ponchos and like the little hat and stuff. And they're like, "I'm here." And he's like, and the teacher just walks right by the guy. He's like, no, I'm here. He's like, "Well, I was looking for a student, but all I see is a jackass." Because he's just like that. He's like, "Be who you are. Don't try to be like me." He's like, if you're my student, be you. be you. Don't try to be something you're not. And because he was trying to dress up authentically and all that stuff, he's like, but you're not. You're just you. So
that came up in a reading yesterday. We after yesterday's session, Mary and I traded readings, and one of the things that came up, which was I won't say it was a message for one of us, but I think it's a wonderful message to share with everyone. And it was from one of our guides, said, be you, that weird you that you are when you're by yourself and you're like in your groove doing your own thing, and you're just being your weird crazy self doing your spiritual stuff, whatever it is. Be that all the time. Share that with the world, and that's what the world's going to love about you. If you're sitting here trying to be a certain kind of person or do like act a certain way in front of other people can sense either consciously or unconsciously that you're not being authentic. But if you're your own quirky, weird self, as you share yourself with the world, that's what people are going to love about you. So I thought that was kind of a beautiful message.
Absolutely. Dr. Dane here actually has a whole thing, Be Weird, Stay Different. It's like a whole series of classes that he offers. And it's your second access book, if you were to pick another one to read, would be Being You, Changing the World, because it's all about how you step into the totality of your being and not give a shit what other people think about you. Because they actually say that for every judgment that you just are an allowance of, that you don't align and agree with or resist and react to, it's like you make $5,000 more that you're energetically. It's when you start putting up a fight because someone judges you and you're like, no, that's not true. Or if you say, yeah, that's so true, I'm so awesome. Like either one sticks you because you're buying into the duality. Yeah. And so really just to be an allowance of the judgments, and it just say that's an interesting point of view, that you have that point of view.
So say the name of that book again. Being You, Changing the World. Okay.
And it's another one you can get on Audible, and it's awesome.
Nice. That'll probably be my next one then.
I've gone through it at least 20 times, and each time I hear something, I'm like, has that always been in this book? It seems like it's brand new, but it's really good. So, and if you're listening, I highly recommend it for you too. You would do a disservice to yourself if you didn't give it a chance.
The whole questions thing and access is so fascinating to me. I want to get a little more into that, but I don't. I guess where am I going with this? Oh, Spirit's taking all kinds of things from my mind these past couple of days. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, if you're joining us or still with us, if you want to make a comment, you can ask any question. We always put up a topic to start with, but we can go anywhere in our dialogue and conversation. There's nothing off limits. Unless it's illegal, then, private message us. Then we can talk about that instead.
And we'll talk about it at length at that point.
Yeah. Or maybe we would just talk anyway, because we like breaking rules. But with the point of view creates reality, the other thing that kind of goes along with this, a different topic, but akin to it, is that your energy flows where or energy goes where your tension goes, right? So I give this example at Disney World when we were there, and actually we've been there a couple of times, and this held true the last two times. The first time I fell victim to this. So they have this app, and you can see on the app what all the wait times are for rides, and you're like, oh, look, Pirates of the Caribbean, only is 10 minutes, let's go there. And we're like hustling over to go to this ride. We get there, and now it's a 40-minute wait. And I had this awareness, like finally, like on the last day of our very first trip, it's like, oh, it's because I'm focused on it. It's because I focused on it, and because I'm focused on it, like the collective consciousness is all focused on this now. And I'm like, oh, so like I would be like, all right, we're going there, but everybody think of that ride. And no joke, we would get there, and then it was like just a 10-minute wait, and that worked without fail. Like the last two times we were there, we would just always be able to kind of use that technique. You pick what you're doing, then wipe it from your mind, and that's where I like to give the example that intention is not like when you're moving your hand like this. It's not that you're going move, 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 move. You set your attention like a bow and arrow, let it go, and then you see your experience. So you make your choice. You don't have to focus on it, and if you do focus on it, that could either work for or against you, depending what you're trying to do. Like with our example, we had to create a longer line because everybody was focused on the same energy as us.
And it's that set it and forget it that I've heard it put that way as well. Yeah. But like you said, there's a lot of people that aren't even aware that there's not a process of thinking behind moving. I'll ask people when bringing their awareness to like what their thoughts are, and some people aren't aware that it's possible to not think. People think you're continuously thinking, and they confuse awareness with thought. I notice that happens a lot.
Yep.
They'll ask, okay, for example, when you go to like pick up your phone, just this action of reaching out, grabbing the phone, and looking at it. So did you sit there and the whole time we're like, okay, so I'm going to open this finger, that finger, that finger, that finger, that finger, and then I'm going to reach out, but I'm going to stop right as I reach the phone, use this amount of pressure, however many PSI, and then turn my wrist as I bring it up to, like, no, you're not doing any of that. You just had the intention of, you may not even have thought I'm going to pick up my phone. It was just a thoughtless action right there. And so we're constantly doing so much without actually having to think about it with words, with thoughts. And so yeah, having an awareness of something and actually thinking about it are two completely different things.
And you just put my whole example into much greater context, because we made the choice to go to the ride, but then the whole time after we made the choice, we're thinking about it, and then that's what created the focus for everybody else on it. But if we had just made the choice and set it and forget it and just walked to the ride, it would have been that was a great context. Thank you.
Yeah. It's but that's where we can unconsciously put up resistance to things that we're trying to actualize when we do that also. So say okay, this week I'm gonna actualize an additional $1,000. I have an additional $1,000, additional $1,000. Do whatever your process is, and then if you just set that and you put out enough energy and power, and then whatever happens in the moment, you feel called to, okay, I need to get up and do this. I'm making a new video. I'm going out. Handing out flowers. But do the action, but be present in that moment and do whatever it is you're doing while being fully aware in that moment. But if you're sitting there the whole time you're doing this stuff, you're going, okay, I'm going to make that $1,000. I'm going to make that $1,000. Get on, go hand out the flowers, $1,000. And at some point, as you're doing that, little bits of doubt and resistance can come in more easily. And it may just start as a feeling, right? You're sitting there, $1,000, and then there's this like, how's that going to happen though? Is that really possible? And maybe it's just for a second, and then, okay, no, $1,000. And then maybe it comes up a little more powerful the next time. So you're combining this thought of $1,000 with, is it possible? So is it possible to make $1,000? And now you're creating a whole different kind of energy. And then you can sort of out-manifest yourself. If you're just intently focused, you set that intention of that $1,000 is going to happen within a week, and then you let go, and then you're just present in the moment. You've already put it out there, and the universe is working to bring it to you. So it'll work through you in order to actualize that through the path of least resistance.
Yes, and that's why I love using the word with ease when I look to create things. Like, what could I be today to actualize whatever I'm choosing instantly with ease? And then it's just like, because I think of it like the genie. Have you ever seen those things where, I wish for $1 million, and the $1 million appears above the poor guy's head and crushes him? So, so I always I like adding with ease, because I don't want anything popping out that I wasn't expecting, or that happens in a way that isn't preferred.
Yeah, and then the universe will always follow the path of least resistance to get something to you. I was reading a book years ago about manifestation and magic, and it was talking about how, yes, we can use magic manifestation to manifest $100, right? And so, but if you're trying to manifest, say, for example, you're being specific, like $100 bill, so you sit there and it is possible. It's not impossible, but I think a real master could just sit there and have a $100 bill just poof out in front of them. But most of the time, that's not going to happen. So the universe follows the path of least resistance. So maybe that $100 bill that you've been visualizing or whatever, you're walking down the street and then someone dropped it and they found it. Okay, that's great, but still maybe not the path of least resistance. A lot had to happen for someone in order to drop that $100 bill. So instead, maybe then you get a card from a relative you haven't heard from in a long time, and they said, I was thinking about you and I wanted to get you this gift, but blah blah blah, something happened. And they said, anyway, here's $100. Little less. But then even more than that is, whatever means you normally make money if you work a job or you have like a regular wage or whatever, and all of a sudden, someone, your boss, recognizes you for doing something outstanding, you get like a bonus. The universe will always continually find the way of least resistance. So if there's already a stream of income, maybe it'll come that way, or it'll come in some unexpected way. But the point of them telling the story was not to get you to focus on trying to manifest $100. But think about this. all that time that you're sitting there focusing on manifesting that $100 bill and spending all that time thinking about it, and the time it took for that to show up, you could have just worked a minimum wage job for a day or a day or two, whatever, and made that $100 without having to sit there and do all the manifestation and practice in order to try and like manifest it magically. So instead, focus on what are you trying to actualize instead of like just a finite dollar amount or something. Try and manifest something much more magical in your life. And people get focused a lot on money. They want to, and I give the example often of like $1,000 or $100 or whatever. Instead of that, why not work towards manifesting a means of income that you truly enjoy, something that you love doing that will continue to bring financial abundance into your life? Financing that will bring you not only more joy, but the financial freedom that you're looking for in trying to manifest that dollar amount.
True. And I had a thought, and now it's gone.
See, it's happening with both of us.
Oh, no.
Are there some entities messing with us today?
No. Well, maybe. We called a lot in before the show.
We did.
But one of the things with that is if whatever you put out to the universe show up and don't let the robot drive. I say like we have this little autopilot and it likes driving us around because it's boring. And like if you've ever driven to your workplace and got there and don't remember the drive, that's what I'm talking about. Like there was an autopilot driving. And oftentimes after we put something into the universe, it might have 1,000 different ways that it could have actualized and been in your life. But because we're having autopilot on, we just passed them all up. And there's an amazing success story. If you've never heard of, do you know who Steve Harvey is? He's a comedian. He's been on TV. Like, go back and Google and find his story of how he rose up to fame. And it all came down to like he was about to give up and go home, and he got a phone call that opened up a job that got him the money to get the plane ticket to get to New York and be on TV. And everything was just like it just lined up, and he followed the energy. And so after you put it out there, don't get caught up on how it shows up. Like you look at all the possibilities of how the universe might bring it to you. Let's see. Oh, Mary Lee says yes. So thanks for your contribution, Mary Lee. Oh, she's in the shaman program too, by the way.
Oh, is she? Wonderful.
Yeah. We're all over the place. Shamans are taking over the world.
We are, yeah. Well, I was thinking about it, like Zane was saying that, you'll see the word shaman in front of so many things, and people tend to get sort of upset with I know, like for example, yoga. Like a lot of the yoga that people practice in the US isn't really true to like the practices that the yogis would practice. You see things like there's beer yoga and goat yoga and all this stuff, and people get really upset about like that's a disgrace to the actual practice. But with like the shamanic thing, he was saying that's a great thing. If they open up a shamanic donut shop, I'll be there tomorrow. Because it's normalizing shamanism and getting the word out there. And with shamanism, we're trying to get the word out to and we're going to go, I think, a little more into this next week, and this whole topic of like sort of what shamanism is and all that. But it's a means for us to explore the spiritual on our own and find our own path in our own way without needing the context of like religion or something. So the more that those terms are out there, and the more you see that shamanic donut shop or shamanic, whatever your people are creating, the better. So yeah, I think that's wonderful.
Well, and the thing is, when the conflict comes up for things, to whatever it is, whether if you're a yoga professional and you have that point of view about all the different yogas disgracing it, or if you're a shaman that never would call yourself a shaman because that's in your lineage, the tradition, instead of getting into a place of tension when you see other people doing it, ask, well, what's right about this I'm not getting? That would be the access question. And that everybody's
what's right about this that I'm not getting?
Yeah, what's right about this I'm not getting? So if something's triggering you take a step back. What's right about this I'm not getting?
Oh, okay.
To take yourself out of the conflict, and you might realize like, wow, I'm just, I've always just been under the conclusion and the definition that my way is the right way, but my way is just a way, and that's just another way. And when you take yourself out of the conflict, then you can see the magic and the gold and the difference. But we sometimes are taught that this is the way, and if we align and agree with our teacher, then everything that's not that we're going to be in resistance to. And now we just cut ourselves off from how many different possibilities and how many different little nuances and nuggets of consciousness that could have been there, but because we are not even willing to look at it because it has a word there that we now judge as, well, now that's not the real deal. And now we miss all this magic.
Oh yeah, I can't tell you how. So I remember it was one of my first human teachers that I ever had was a Zen master. I was studying under him, and I came to him and I started telling him, I'm like, oh, I'm learning a little bit about this and like shamanism and like Kundalini stuff. And he said to me, don't be a salad bar Buddhist. He said, if you're going to practice, if you're going to practice Zen, practice Zen. You can't be all over the place. Like if you're trying to attain enlightenment through Zen, do that. And I remember at first I had this, I sort of stepped back and I was like, well, that doesn't really resonate with me at all. And I thought, am I supposed to just sit and do nothing but Zen? Or like, am I meant to go out and explore all kinds of things? And like right there, I started to move away from it. But in doing so, I started to discover all kinds of new things, went deeper into shamanism, met people with all kinds of different backgrounds in different spiritual practices, and started to learn and develop my own path in a way that I'd never had before. But if you hadn't asked that limiting question, and like I may not have opened up as much. So
yeah, and you could have easily gone the other way. If you put so much weight into your teacher, you could have also said, okay, and dropped all the other things.
Right.
I mean, people could go either way with that question. I'm glad that you chose the way you chose. But I love that salad bar Buddhist. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Take a little bit from that teaching, a little bit from that teaching under your plate.
See, one of my first teachers, like Thomas, she would always say, learn everything you can, take the best and leave the rest. So it's neat to see that they encourage that at fellowships. So
yeah, that's good.
If anybody has any questions, feel free. We love to respond to whatever questions that you might have, whether it's on this topic or any topic. We always have a starting point, but we give ourselves the freedom to go wherever the energy of the group goes.
Yeah. So, what do you guys want to hear us talk about? Let us know.
Well, we are starting to get like a little bit more organized. Like we have some stuff planned for next week already, so that's pretty cool. We're going to have some special guests on. We're going to have Michelle on, who's going to talk about crystal skulls, I believe Tuesday or Wednesday. We're going to have Jill Mattson coming on. She developed frequencies for COVID-19 along with Sherry Edwards, which is going to be a really interesting thing because Sherry Edwards has this gift of being able to hear the frequency of an illness. And so they actually worked with her to come up with frequencies that would help the body potentially be better against stuff like that. Of course,
that's awesome.
Yeah, we're not medical doctors, so we're not claiming to treat, diagnose. It's just for entertainment purposes only. Right. But seriously, if there's any or in fun, if there's any topics that you like to hear or see, please let us know and ask your questions in the comments. What, was I too silly? Now I threw us off.
No, not at all.
I like being silly though. It's good. Okay, so point of view creates reality, and one of the big things to a tool from Access to work with, like if you find yourself in judgment about anything or anyone, especially yourself, you use the tool IPOV, which is interesting point of view. So if you find yourself judging, oh man, why do I always procrastinate? And why am I always late for things? You'd be like, well, it's an interesting point of view that I have that point of view. And instantly it starts to take you out of the space of judgment and giving yourself a space of neutrality around it where you can just let yourself be and then choose different. But if you're always fighting against your own judgments about yourself, that's what you create. You create more of the fight because you're not an allowance of that. And in truth, procrastination, for people like myself and possibly Casey, I don't know if he's a procrastinator, but
I've had a history of procrastination.
But for people who have an ease with creation, it turns out that it's not so much about procrastinating. It's boring if you don't wait till the last minute because you can do it so easily.
Yep.
And so, like, is it really a potency that is a wonderful thing in your life that you have mislabeled and misidentified as something because everybody else judges you for it? But in reality, you pull out that paper in 2 hours the day before it's due and get an A.
My classmates, I went in massage therapy school. They would get so frustrated with me, right? So there were a lot of people in the class. Like we learned anatomy and physiology, sometimes in greater detail than I've heard certain nurses learn going through nursing school. We had to learn like everything from chemistry all the way up to like, all the individual nerves and everything. There were a lot of students who were struggling just to barely pass, even with all the extra credit and stuff that we were given. And I would show up and I would get not just all the questions right, but all the bonus questions right. So my grade point average in anatomy and physiology, or my percentage, was like 160% or something absurd like that. And so I remember at one point, that people started asking me, "What do you do to study? How do you get ready? Like you just like this all seems to come so easily." And I'm like, "No, you don't want to know." What do you mean? So at the time, I think we always had them like right after the weekend, and at the time I liked to drink a lot on the weekends. So I would tell them, "Do you really want to know what I do to study?" Yeah, they wanted to know. They wanted to hear. So okay. So the whole week while they're sitting there doing their flashcards, studying, going over, I just hang out, do whatever, and then the night before the test, I get really drunk, and then I wake up that morning super hungover, having not touched the notes at all the entire time prior to this. And about 3 hours before the test, I read through my notes about 3 times, come to class, read through them one more times, and that's how I get 100% on all the tests. But I used to do that. That's how I passed high school. I was not a good high school student. I was just bored by it all. Nothing caught my interest, and I was the kind of person where, like, if it didn't interest me and I wasn't like inspired to study or do something, I wouldn't do it. I'd rather sleep than sit there and do something that I didn't want to do. And but the only reason I actually passed high school was that it would come down to, okay, you have to pass this test or else you're going to fail. And I would go, all right. Read through the notes, and then I'd get 100%, and that was enough to get me like my D in order to pass.
I passed all the tests, but I didn't do homework. So I was always like a low grade high schooler. And then I found out that if you had a GPA, I think of 3.0, you got like a discount on your car insurance. And I went to a straight A student overnight, and I got A's and everything, but I was like this shy of getting it up high enough to get the discount.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, what we do to ourselves, it's funny. But if you are like a procrastinator or whatever you find yourself judging yourself for, ask what's right about it you're not getting. Is there really a potency in there? And we were talking offline once, or maybe it was on cam, I don't know, about astrology. And for every aspect of astrology, there's skilled and unskilled application of it. So procrastination, the potency to be able to create at the last second and create well, is a real potency. How could you shift that to use it more consciously where it doesn't feel the stress or the hoocha around waiting to the last minute? And is it really your stress that when you wait to the last minute, or is everybody else freaking out because they don't know if you're going to deliver what you're supposed to deliver, and you're picking up on their stress and making it your own because you're an empath?
And the whole, also, people who procrastinate. I was just listening to the Joy of Business. She talks about this, but then I was watching a TED Talk where a woman talked about this as well, but like a year or so ago. And she's talking about they're like just as a different kind of person. I think in Access, what do you say? They call them humanoids or whatever.
Humans and humanoids.
Yeah. So there are people who in this world who they have a passion, and like, for say whatever, they want to be a carpenter, and so they know, like, I'm going to learn everything about carpentry, and they focus, go to school, start to do carpentry, and they get really good at it, and they master it, and they're like a completely wonderful master at their craft, and they have a very successful life with that thing. And then there are other people like me who throughout childhood, I had so many different hobbies and so many different things that I wanted to learn that I can't even remember half of them. I jumped from one thing, like I'd be really into, like computer animation. I got so good at that I won a bunch of awards online, and then got bored with that. And it's okay, now I'm going to learn guitar, and then got good enough to play guitar that I surpassed my friends who'd been practicing for like several years, and then got bored with that. And then on to the next thing, like learned to like count cards and do all this, like all over to all these different things. And then, even throughout my life, I went to broadcasting school. Was really
look at you now. You're
there we go. It all came full circle. I was really into that, and then I had sort of my spiritual awakening, and other things start to happen. And it's like, okay, I'm not doing that, and then went on to healing and health. So, but she was saying this. So for a lot of us who have that kind of experience where we want to go from one thing to another, we tend to kind of perceive that as a negative thing because we're told you need to do one thing, you need to focus, settle in, find whatever it is you're going to do, get good at it, make a career out of it, and you need to be financially stable in your job or whatever. But for many of us, that's not right. That's not how we're wired. We're not wired to do that.
But this is actually a place where a subconscious point of view can create against you in a way. Because growing up, I was taught the same thing. You need to do the thing they call go to school in order to get the thing they call a job, in order to be the thing they call successful. And you stay with the same company for 30 years and you do all this stuff. And that doesn't fit into my reality. But if a part of me bought into that, and if you feel that you can't be successful unless you follow that recipe and you bought into that as a child, not saying you, but then no matter how hard you try to actualize abundance through just what you really would like to do, you might have a hard time because your other than conscious might be like, but you didn't do all the things you were supposed to do. You didn't get good grades at college, or you didn't, get the career, get really good at one thing, and you're not the cog in the wheel that is making everything work for the country.
Yeah. Those, again, oftentimes it's not our own beliefs even that we're working with when we're trying to work through that stuff, and you don't have to identify exactly where it came from, whether it was like your parents or a teacher that told you that you had to focus and sit down and get serious about finding your career path or whatever it was. But we can become aware of the energy. And one thing that I've started to notice, I know we've talked about this before, but I wanted to share more of a specific experience. So, for example, when I'm working with trying to actualize something around Shaman's Way or with Stir Crazy Shamans, I'll sit there and I'm asking questions or like using affirmations or whatever I'm doing. Like, okay, we're going to get to that 100 subscribers, and what can I do in order to reach more people and be more engaged or whatever I'm asking. And then I'll start to feel these little like this tension in the body and in my energy field to certain questions that I ask or things that I'm trying to manifest. And before, I may have just sort of ignored that and gone like, okay, that's not the right energy, so move on, ask something else. But now what I do is I really go into that sensation, feel it, find it. And I know there's some judgment I have about myself or whatever it is I'm working with that is like reacting to that. There's some thought pattern, some emotional pattern that's tensing up in some way and trying to resist that. So then I go into that, and then I use techniques like the clearing statement I've been taught, and then like other things to just kind of breathe and use whatever energy needs to come through in order to release that. So I'm not going in and trying to like go back in the past and remember what was it that put that in my mind, but I can feel that. It's like right here in the chest, right? Okay, there's that thing, there's this tension there, there's that tightness that's resisting that. Breathe, bring my attention into that area, and then just release that and let it flow out until everything feels light again, and then proceed with whatever I was doing.
Absolutely. That's a great point, because you don't have to bring it up. But if you do, I have had a couple clients that even I could tell them that till I'm blue in the face, and it's like the way their mind works is they got to know what they're letting go of. And so if that's you, then honor that too and be like, okay, let's open that box and dig through the shit. and don't judge yourself for that, because if that is your process, then that's your process, and you just kind of go through it. But you don't have to. Or you could ask, what would it take for me to change that process so not have to dig through the box, and see if you might get an inspiration from spirit of a different way you could do it, like maybe a shamanic meditation journey with Casey, for example.
Yeah, check out Shaman's Way, which I have the link to if you're interested in shamanic journeying and all this stuff. Posted that now. I had it ready, waiting for that moment.
So I created the moment for you. Look at that. It's almost like we planned that, but we totally didn't.
No. I had so you were just saying, oh, wow, where were we? 2 seconds ago.
Oh, you were talking about you don't have to identify the things that could create the other than conscious boulders that would prevent you from actualizing. And I said, but if you're one of the people who like to...
Oh, yeah. So what do you think about, I've met so many people that tell me they go to healing sessions, maybe not with me, but with other people. And they say, oh, we were working through this, and like these really powerful emotions came up, and I remembered when I was a kid and like had this trauma, and then worked through that, and then like I felt good, And then next week I started to feel down again. And so then I went back for a healing session, and then I found out there was like this thing, and I had to relive that. And then the thing from before came up, and there was still energy around that I had to work. So what do you say to those people who are just they feel like they have to relive the same thing over and over again, but they're not getting anywhere with their healing?
There's from an access standpoint, there's one particular band called the Implant Band that's really good for releasing things like that, and also a particular energy. They call it an access trifold sequencing systems, and it's like for PTSD people who keep reliving the same thing over and over and over again, and it's basically an energy that helps you to step out of that. So like, whether or not you could find an access practitioner from a shamanic perspective, it feels more like a soul loss with a common theme. So like if you had your original feeling of abandonment from the first time that you were a child and you were just left in your crib and mom didn't come get you because they're going to let you cry this one out, and you had that first feeling of abandonment, mom didn't come. Okay. And then all throughout your life, you have these themes of abandonment. And so original soul loss, soul fracture version number 2, 3, 4, up to 34. So like they go for this thing that they're working through and they're dealing with number 34, and like, oh, wait, now there's 33. So when you're working with the healer, the idea would be then for you to get to the original wound. So this is what I'm dealing with. However, is that the original wound, or is this just a representation of another energy? And if you go back and you really follow the energy with that, you'll get to whatever the original wound is and not have to keep reliving things. Because I get the whole, it feels like reliving, but in this case, it feels more prone to be just like something that has a similar energy, but we didn't follow the thread.
And also I would say to people, if it's the same, not just like one experience and then something that's related over and over again, but for people that are reliving the same thing over and over again during their healing sessions, like the exact same situation. So that I would say, first ask yourself, is this really helping me to relive that over and over again? Because I think oftentimes people they think that in doing so, they're helping to release the energy of it, but really they're amplifying it and they're giving it more energy.
Right.
Every time they
Sorry. In the main method of soul retrieval Tao tradition, all you need to know is what happened, when it happened, and who it happened with, or whatever. And you don't want the client to tell the story. You're just asking for the date, the time, and kind of just so I was abused. It was when I was this grade, and it happened in whatever city. And so it helps the healer tune into the energy, but you don't go into the story, because reliving the story can create like this energy of the victim and reinforce the issue, actually. So it's more like identify what, when, and where, and then take care of it. But reliving, like going through the story, it's kind of like that why question. Why did this happen to me? And like you're actually reinforcing the trauma instead of getting over the drama.
And at the moment, I can almost think of it as like that traumatic experience is its own conscious entity, right? And the only way that it sustains itself is when it comes up to feed with your attention. Because nothing will exist without our awareness and our attention, right?
Well, and that just opens up a whole nother world, because what if you have an entity, right? And it really likes this one energy, and every time you think you forget about it, it like takes like the thing and just pokes you in the wound again.
Right.
Because it puts you there, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is what I really like, and it gets that energy. So when it comes to healing, like really just you go through the whole gamut of being open and asking what would be the greatest possibility, and hopefully your healer is going to be aware enough to pick up on the things that you really need to work with to let go of it.
Yeah, and that's a very real thing that happens quite often, is that people have entities that are feeding on particular types of emotional energy. So yeah, that could. But regardless, whether it's an entity causing that, or if you're consciously going there and bringing it up yourself for whatever reason because you're trying to work through it, know that energy. Like I said, it's only sustained through your attention and your awareness. If you don't give attention to something, it won't exist within your fields of energy. So if you bring it up over and over and over again, you're giving it more and more and more attention, and you're not releasing it, you're just feeding it. And then every time you bring it back up, it's more powerful and even more difficult to get rid of. So approach it differently if that's what you're experiencing.
And also, if you're reliving that, then ask the question, is it mine? Because if you had the trauma, are you just so aware that you're picking up on the guilt of the other person that was involved with that? And is all of what you're even experiencing yours, or are you picking up on someone else's stuff?
Yeah,
There's a
very.
lot of moving parts. Everybody's situation will be different, and that's why, especially with access body processes and other things, like people could have come to the manifestation of a physical ailment many different ways, and so like the process of working with that person energetically would have, if you had 100 different people all with the exact same cancer, you could have 100 different ways that you would go about helping them because they all arrived at that manifestation in a different way.
Yeah, and everyone. I think we've talked a little bit before about needing to sort of get the person out of their like way of thinking and being, you know. So I think we can start to do that a little bit ourselves if we have certain we know we have expectations around like how this is going to, you're going, you know, you're open enough to go to a healer for whatever ailment it is, but now you have the idea of like, okay, it's going to take this when I feel this like rush of whoosh go through my body, then that's going to be the moment it's gone. And now you've closed yourself off to all the other ways that this healing could come about. And then again, but going back to what we're talking about, people think that like once I really relive that experience as if it's happening again, and then I face it and I have the bravery and strength to say, I release you, then I'll be healed, right? You know, so now you're closed off to all the other ways that the healing could come about. And it's so that's why some, like Hank brought up the idea of like the guy who went and this client was just so wrapped up in their head they couldn't let go and allow the healing to take place, so he takes a sliced up green pepper and starts waving it around.
Oh, that was Tom Kratzley, but yeah.
but that just created enough of like a strange experience that person was like, what is going on here right now? And so that got them to step out of their head for a second and then step into the experience and be open to it because it was so weird and out there.
Yeah, absolutely. A shaman is a showman sometimes because the healing could be as simple as a handshake and you're done. But it's for the Western mind, especially, sometimes it needs a little show and it needs something to get you out of the headspace.
Yeah, because we're taught, you know, anything worth having is worth you know, whatever worth working for. You got to work hard in order to make that money or whatever it is, and good things come to those who wait, and all these little phrases we have, you know. So we think same thing. If we're really going to heal from something, it's got to be something that takes a lot of time and effort, and it's going to be a really difficult thing to accomplish. But those are just ideas; they're not real. They don't actually exist.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about it, I did just post a link. We have with our teacher, Zane Kerfman, author of Inca Mountain Magic. We're going to be doing a 6-week introduction into shamanism. It's actually navigating the sacred, and at the end of it, you'll have built a Tehuanthan mesa that will look something like this. Doesn't have to be a Peruvian cloth like that, but you will have exercises and homework, and we'll go out into nature and find pretty stones that you will call your own and empower. And that's all going to be starting a week from today. Next Thursday on the new moon. So that is
nice.
very
soon.
He specifically wanted it to start on a new or full moon. So it's like it came out so perfectly because that's next Thursday, and we have exactly 6 Thursdays before the start of the apprenticeship. So it's like assuming that we can start in May like we would like to. So looking forward to that.
Oh, it's going to be wonderful. I'm so excited. Well, hey, we're coming up on the hour now. So while we're kind of plugging things and everything, is tonight Thursday? Or is it Wednesday? What day is it?
Tonight is Thursday.
Thursday. Okay.
Meditation.
Yeah, so we have a shamanic meditation tonight at 7 p.m. If you're interested in learning to connect with the realms of spirit or your spirit guides, or you're interested in just sort of learning a little more about what a shaman might experience, or just learning to expand upon your own spiritual path, whatever, or you just want to relax and have a fun experience. Either way, come check it out on Shaman's Way on YouTube, which is this link right here. And then it'll be live at 7 o'clock. But if you miss it, if you don't catch the start time exactly, you can go back on Shaman's Way, and then you can watch that video from today or all the other past shamanic meditations.
And Becky just asked a question that she caught us yesterday. I was wondering where the links are being posted. She hasn't been seeing them on Facebook. Well, we are posting them on my personal profile, Casey's profile, the HHH Facebook page, Sonic Shaman, and then also on the Stir Crazy Shamans YouTube channel, which I'll actually I'll post a link to that now too. So it's definitely going out there. I'm not sure if you like if it just doesn't hit your news feed, can't help you with that. But for sure, if you go to the YouTube channel and subscribe, you're definitely going to get the notifications when we're going to go live. And we try to schedule. Facebook only lets us schedule a week out, so we're not really that good about it. We usually do it like the day of or the day before. But we do have like some guests coming on next week. So we have like actually I will show you a little cool overlay that I made for it. So next Thursday. Did I not? Oh, yeah. Next Thursday, we will have Jill Matson on with us. And she worked with Sherry Edwards, who has the gift of actually being able to hear the vibration of diseases and things like that. And they put together a whole bunch of free music. And we'll be posting the links for it next week. But they, based on Sherry's work, they put together musical tracks that have certain frequencies that the idea is that it would be a good contribution to the body to. I'm not a medical doctor, but it would just create more ease around the coronavirus. We'll say it that way. Or if you were to get it, create more ease with recovering. But there's a lot to be said that there's like a Rife machine technology. You could actually have the frequency of a disease and play the inverse frequency and in theory get rid of it or whatnot. Yeah,
that's a whole other conversation, which hopefully we'll get into some of that when she.
Oh well, if not with her, I think Dr. K's equipment has like the Rife technology and stuff like that too.
Oh,
I'm only the actual medical professional. We can definitely swing that conversation more easily with her.
Nice.
From a ease of it being received standpoint.
Very cool. All right. So
I'd be glad you like the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all. Thank you all for watching, for joining, for giving us your energy and attention. I thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And Nike. And one other thing too, if you're going to watch this on a replay, like if you just joined us and you're going to end up going back and watch it, a great way to do that will help us get a little bit more awareness out there is start a watch party. Or something like that when you're watching it on Facebook, so your friends can see what you're watching and maybe they'll tune into and find us and tune in for a future episode. So if that feels light, please do it tonight.
Yes, and don't forget, please subscribe. That helps us to get our information and our wonderful energy and message out there to as many people as possible. So please subscribe. That really helps us. So thank you.
A Nike.